Hey everybody, this is the recap from Washington, D.C., what's happening in Congress. We're going to start with the HJ Resolution, House Joint Resolution 76. It is entitled The Disapproval of Executive Rule on Borrower Defense in Institutional Accountability. So if you're probably aware, you watch TV and you see these ads to go to some technical school, and during the last administration, a lot of those technical schools were shut down because they weren't really providing a valid education for a lot of people that were going, and they were defrauding people. And in that vein, the administration, rightly so, sought to not only punish them, but to have students recoup their funds. In doing so, what they allowed during the last administration was, of course, the federal government, who wrote the rule, and state attorney generals to pick the winners and losers. And what was happening, among other things, is class action lawsuits against, let's say, ABC school. There's a class action lawsuit, and then the attorneys collect the fees and the claim and provide it to the plaintiffs, some of which had a great experience and now are working in their field. Also, the taxpayers became on the hook to pay for this because a lot of the institutions that closed up could no longer pay. Among other things that it also included is you had to default on a loan to be one of the plaintiffs, or to ask for redress of your grievance, of your claim. And so it was a perverse incentive to actually default on the loan so that you could get the federal government to pay back. The current administration sought to fix those things. This bill wants to roll back to the old way, where people that literally have no claim essentially were getting paid because other people that went to the school had a claim, and everybody that went to the school then got paid at taxpayers' expense. So that's one of the bills. I voted against that. The Veteran House Act, which was meant, that is HR 2398, HR 2398. Essentially, we don't want homeless veterans, and we've all been aware of veterans that have an inability to get housing, and they're on the streets, and it is unacceptable. What this bill sought to do was to provide housing for veterans who may have been dishonorably or other than honorably discharged, who were homeless, and unfortunately put them in the front of the line, in front of veterans that had been honorably discharged. We all want to end veterans' homelessness, but it is unacceptable that someone that was dishonorably discharged be put at the front of the line in front of people that served their country well and were honorably discharged and are also homeless. So unfortunately, I voted against that one as well. Then another one, HR 1230, the Protecting Older Workers Against Discrimination Act, which sounds like, why wouldn't you vote against that? So there's a current law that you can't discriminate against older employees for the purpose of their age. This lowers the bar. It's really a boon for trial lawyers, and allows, if that's a factor, you might be laying off 20 people. And of those 20 people, because your business is just down, you may be laying off. And of those 20 people, some might fall into the category of older employees. They would be able to sue, not because you laid off 20 people, just because they're older employees. We want this to be fixed. Obviously, we have a law in place that age discrimination is not appropriate, but giving the trial lawyers another opportunity to just make millions of dollars is not something that I would support. So that's those are those bills. We have some other here that are. Let me just go to the phone here. I've got my notes on the phone for this one. All right, another bill, HR 3621. The Comprehensive Credit Act. The bill would restrict the consumer credit market and raise the cost of borrowing for consumers. So right now, you're getting a credit score from somebody. There are generally 3 large companies. And this bill sought to make sure that they weren't counting everything in your credit score and reduce the amount of time that certain things could be on your credit score. Now, they had some good amendments. I voted for one because I do think that if you're paying your utility bills, that should be able to be used on your credit score. And some of these companies don't allow the use of utility bills on your credit score, which seems crazy to me, so I voted for that amendment. However, what it does is it doesn't allow the credit score companies to have a valid and accurate depiction of your credit history. And if that happens, you know what's going to happen? Banks are going to be able to loan less money because they're not going to be sure they're ever going to be paid back. The only way that financial institutions lend money is because they have a pretty good idea of your ability to pay back. I got a problem with some of these credit score companies, probably many of you do as well, but allowing or forcing them not to provide accurate information is not going to help the lender, and it's not going to help the person that wants to get a loan that can't prove that they have a good credit score. So it was offered by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ayanna Pressley. Just in case you're wondering who does that, it just increases the cost of a compliance and reduces your ability to get a loan because your credit score is not a valid depiction of your actual credit. So I agree there are problems with the credit scoring agencies. Having the government kind of take over and tell them everything that they got to do isn't the answer to me. There were some votes, 2 votes on Iraq. What we call the authorization of the use of military force, an AUMF. So what we did, we sent a bill over from the House to the Senate on the Merchant Marine Academy and a commemorative coin. It was sent back by the Senate, approved that way. The House then stripped all the commemorative coin information out of it and made it a bill about ending our ability to be in Iraq. Now, I've been on record on many occasions that the AUMFs, the authorization of the use of military force, needs to be updated. As a matter of fact, I authored my own. I couldn't get anybody from, quite honestly, almost anybody from my side and nobody from the other side to engage in a discussion with me over this, because I think it's important. If we're sending our folks to war, we need to know what they're going to do there, what the mission is, and not just send our military to war, but our country. If we're going to go to war, our country should go to war. I think it's easy this way to send our military without the resolve of the country. And these are old. This is since 2001, 2002. They were appropriate then, but they need to be updated. So I've been very clear, just wrote an op-ed with some of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle about this thing. So I think I'm very clear on this, but that's not what this was about. So one of the amendments to this coin bill said that we have to leave Iraq immediately. Well, we have troops in contact there right now, and I know that it's not a designated war zone, but you don't just immediately shut the light switch off. There's no ramp in time to get troops out or to set policy. We have the blessing of the Iraqi government to be there. And actually, it's one of the things that allowed us to kill this terrorist, Soleimani, and eliminate him from the battlefield because he was in Iraq. So while I agree that the conversation needs to happen, this wasn't a conversation. They took a bill that was meant for something else and designated for this so that they would limit debate on this. I'm in the Foreign Affairs Committee. This is something we should debate. You know what another thing that we should debate about this? Warfare has changed. Cyber warfare has changed dramatically in 20 years. And the president, the administration, and the American people need the ability to react immediately, sometimes to prevent things in the cyberspace. This would eliminate that. This would essentially make Iraq a free fire zone. So I voted against that. The other one, the Kana Amendment, prevents the use of funds for military action in and around or against Iraq. Unfortunately, while we're not at war with Iraq, there are proxies from Iran and Iraq, and one is Soleimani, who was eliminated from the battlefield. Our service members are placed there. They're told you can fight this enemy while this enemy is shooting at you. Well, you got to be able to defend yourself from both, not just one. That's unacceptable. That's why these need to be updated. But this was not an update. This was not a we're gonna repeal the 2002 AUMF and replace it with some other policy that we've all discussed. This is just eliminate it, and I just think it's really irresponsible. So I voted against both the Ro-Khanna and the Lee amendment. I'm ready to get to work on an AUMF that's realistic as soon as anybody else is. I wrote to the CDC. I just want to let you know I wrote to the CDC regarding the coronavirus. I'm very concerned of where it's emanating from and the fact that China's not allowing our CDC people. They're in Beijing, but they're not allowed to go to the site of the contamination or the outbreak. And we're going to be taking China's word for what happened there and how this is occurring. I'm not comfortable with that, and so I've asked some very pointed questions. I wanted to let you know that, so you can probably see that letter on our website. Also, this is CBD Month, and I just want to highlight our work in this space with the Charlotte's Web Act that allowed for access to CBD, the non-hallucinogenic component, which allows family members to treat their other family members with seizure disorders. And so this is a great thing, and I think that The states are ahead of the federal government. The federal government needs to get on board with a lot of this stuff, and this just highlights it in this month. Also, we introduced the Treat PTSD Act. There's a whole lot of our veterans that come home with this unseen affliction, and there's really not really great treatment. As a matter of fact, only 40% of veterans really feel like the treatment they get is useful and helpful. This is a treatment called stellate ganglion block, which is an injection. It's been done since the 1920s, so it's proven technology, but it only happens in 11 of our, I think, 143 VA facilities. We want that to be available at every single VA facility. This PTSD, where soldiers and service members come home affected by it, affects our communities, affects families, you get alcoholism, and of course the unacceptable suicide rate for our military, over 20 a day. And so this is a way that we can offer the treatment to everybody in our VA facilities. If it doesn't work, that's unfortunate, but we want it to be available for those who it might work for, and it has shown a great promise for many veterans where it is being used, and so we want that to be available. So we introduced that over this period of time. We can talk about the impeachment votes and the status of that, but I think you're probably all well aware there will be a vote on Wednesday for acquittal of the president. You know, they will no longer hear any further witnesses in the Senate. That vote was taken at the end of last week. So we're expecting a vote on Wednesday. I just hope that we can get to solving some really big issues like the student debt crisis. We talked about student financing and being able to recoup that. I've got a bill to get the universities to have some skin in the game so that they're responsible for the courses that they teach, and the fact that their students then can get a job based on the coursework that they've taught. So that would be great. Prescription drugs. We're working on a thing with Mike Kelly called the MAGIC Act regarding insulin pricing, which is really, really important. We could be getting to that. And of course, infrastructure, the roads and bridges, and the other things that are affected in our community that affect our daily lives. And of course, the big things, a trade deal with the UK now that Brexit has occurred, dealing with China and the coronavirus. All these things have been kind of left to languish because we're dealing with impeachment. So I hope we can get past that and move on to other important issues. But until then, I'll talk to you next time. God bless you.